Okay, just off the top here, I think today you saw that the United States announced another additional $450 million worth of security assistance to Ukraine as part of our commitment to help Ukraine defend its democracy in the face of unprovoked Russian aggression. This package contains weapons and equipment, including new high-mobility artillery rocket systems, tens of thousands of additional rounds of ammunition for the artillery systems that have already been provided as well, and patrol boats to help Ukraine defend its coast and its waterways. Now, this is the 13th time that President Biden has authorized a presidential drawdown package during this crisis, bringing the total amount of security assistance that we provided to Ukraine to approximately $6.1 billion just since February 24th, approximately $6.8 billion since the beginning of this administration. As President Biden told President Zelensky when they spoke last week, the United States will continue to bolster Ukraine's defenses and support its sovereignty and its territorial integrity. The bravery and determination of the Ukrainian armed forces, let alone their fellow citizens, continues to inspire the world, and we are committed to standing with them as they fight for their freedom. Now, this announcement comes just before the President's trip leaving Saturday for Europe at a watershed moment in transatlantic solidarity in the post-Cold War era, not just for European security, but for alignment like we've never seen before in how we confront some of the biggest challenges of our time, and not all of those challenges are driven by borders. Throughout the G7 summit in Germany and NATO summit in Spain, you're going to see clearly how the President's day one focus on revitalizing alliances and partnerships has allowed us to seize this moment to benefit the American people, support Ukraine, and hold Russia accountable, all while staying focused on the other challenges that define coming decades, and that includes the challenges posed by China. The President will be conducting in-person, face-to-face diplomacy with a diverse range of leaders in international organizations throughout this trip. He knows better than most that there's no substitute for that kind of personal engagement. You don't surge trust, you got to build it. In Germany, the President will meet with Chancellor Scholz, who holds the G7 presidency, to continue close coordination on the G7 agenda and the core priorities we will advance together in the coming days. Some of these priorities include new commitments to further isolate Russia from the global economy, target the Russian defense supply chain, and continue cracking down on the evasion of these unprecedented sanctions. Because of our actions, Russia is struggling to make bond payments, edging closer to default, and our measures will only tighten the screws and restrict revenue Mr. Putin needs to fund this war. You will also see new commitments on managing the impact that Putin's war has already had on energy and food prices. All this is in keeping with the principles President Biden outlined before Russia's further invasion of Ukraine. And that is that we will work together to ensure Ukraine can defend itself on the battlefield and be in the strongest possible position at the negotiating table as we maximize the cost to Putin and his enablers and minimize the impact of his war on the U.S. and our allies. You also see the G7 come together on some of the key challenges posed by China, as I said. And last but not least, President Biden will formally launch the Global Infrastructure Partnership that G7 leaders agreed to explore last year to offer a positive alternative to infrastructure models that sell debt traps to low and middle income partner countries and advance U.S. economic competitiveness on our national security. These lines of effort at the G7 will build on the work we've done over the past year to drive the global economic recovery and serve as a leader in imposing significant and swift costs on Russia for its war. We've heard for years now people talking about how the G7 was becoming a spent force. But President Biden's leadership and this pivotal inflection point have buried that storyline. The G7 is among the most potent institutions in the world today, with like-minded democracies solving problems. Now, after the G7, the President will meet with President Sanchez and the King and Queen in Spain. Spain, as you know, is hosting the NATO summit. At the NATO summit, leaders will announce new force posture commitments to strengthen NATO's defense and deterrent posture. The U.S. will announce steps to strengthen European security alongside expected major new contributions from allies. And for the first time, the summit will include Indo-Pacific leaders from Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and the Republic of Korea, making clear that whether it's in Europe or the Indo-Pacific region, the United States and our allies and partners will defend the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, finally, the trip will also serve as a clear contrast to some early predictions that never really played out. Instead of a shaken West, for instance, we are more resolved than ever to support Ukraine and are leading that effort head-on at both the G7 and the NATO summit. Instead of distracting us from the Indo-Pacific and China, The President's leadership with respect to supporting Ukraine has actually galvanized leaders in that region and effectively linked our efforts in Europe and in Asia. And those Asian countries that will be participating in the NATO summit, I think, speak volumes about that fact. And on top of all that, we've strengthened our determination to advance a democratic vision that will define the coming decades in terms of building fairer economies, shaping the rules of the road for tech, cyber, quantum, space, climate change, and a whole lot more. The President has never been more confident that this vision will win out over more autocratic and corrupt visions. And he's looking forward to this trip to advance all those elements. With that, we'll take questions.